I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. This is the 2017 EcoBoost Mustang we built for the Ford Performance display at this year's SEMA show. Because it's a Ford Performance car, obviously it's loaded with Ford Performance parts, and we did install videos on all the parts we installed on this car. Because it was a SEMA car though, we couldn't show you the videos until the car debuted, but now the car's out in the public, we can go back and show you the install videos we did. Today we're going to show you how we installed our Ford Performance lowering suspension kit. You can start with the back or the rear suspension, it really doesn't matter. In our case, we're going to start with the front, and the first step is to disconnect the caliper to get it out of the way. Okay, with the caliper and rotor out of the way, now we're going to move on to the sway bar. Now before we separate the spindle from the strut, we're going to go up to the engine bay and remove 2 of the 3 nuts that hold the strut to the strut tower. We're going to remove 2 of the nuts, leave the third one hand tight. Before we separate the spindle from the strut, you want to remove the ABS line. There's 2 clips that hold it on. To separate the spindle from the strut, you have to remove the 2 large 24mm nuts off the back. The bolts themselves are splined, so they're not going to move. Just loosen the nuts. Now once you get the nuts loose, you want to put them out to the end of the bolt and then thread them back on, because you're going to use them to hammer through so you don't damage the bolt. And now you'll just hammer on the nut side to move the spline bolt out. The nice thing with the Ford kit is a fully assembled handling pack, which means the strut comes completely assembled and ready to drop in the car. Simply remove the original and reinstall the Ford Performance piece. It's always easier to start with the bottom bolt, and then you can push the top one into place. Now we're going to start torquing everything down. The top bolts where the studs go through the strut, 46 foot-pound on these. They'll move down below and torque everything down there. Next, we're going to torque the nuts on the bolts that hold the spindle to the strut. These are going to go to 185 foot-pounds, so we need some help getting them that tight. Okay, with everything torqued there, now we can reinstall the rotor and the caliper. We're leaving the sway bar off for now because we're actually going to replace the sway bar with the new piece from Ford Performance. The caliper can be hard to get back on the rotor. To make it easier, put a lug nut in place to hold the rotor still. That way it's not moving around when you're trying to install the caliper. Now we'll repeat the process on the other side. Now we're going to move on to the sway bar. With the Ford Performance strut assemblies mounted, now we can move on to the front sway bar. To get to the bolts, you want to go from the engine bay. So the first thing we're going to do is remove our cold air kit to give us more room. The two bolts we'll need to remove the sway bar on this side. There's one here behind the hose and one in the back. Okay, now we can move over to the passenger side. The same process over here on the other side. They're a little harder to get to. Use some more extensions if you need to. Now is really the worst part of this installation. It's getting the sway bar out. You definitely want to get an extra set of hands. You just slowly have to work your way over. It'll come behind the strut and it will come out down here. Now we're going to transfer both end links over to our new Ford Performance sway bar. Now we put the new bar into place before we install everything. You want to make sure you have the orientation right. When the bar is sitting like this, the end links are going to point upward and inward. The bar in place, we can install the bushings and the brackets supplied by Ford Performance. The bushings come ready to go out of the box, no grease required. Just put them on the bar and then install the bracket. Bracket in place and install the original hardware. We'll do just a couple turns, just get them started, and leave everything loose until we get the other side done. Sway bar in place, we can reinstall our cold air kit and move back under the car. The sway bar is going to have two openings for your factory end link. The further forward you go, the stiffer it's going to be. We're not looking for an extremely stiff sway bar with our use of our car, so we're going to go for the rear hole here. Get both started and then tighten them down. For the rear, we also have new shocks, new springs, and new sway bars. We're going to start by removing the shock by taking off this bracket here, take off these two bolts. Now to remove the shock, we're going to remove these two bottom bolts. We're going to leave the shock out for now and work on the rear spring. To get the spring out, we got to lower down the subframe. I'm going to take this bolt out here so we have a little more room. Now we can actually start lowering the subframe. The first thing we're going to do is support it with a pole jack, then remove these two bolts here that locate this rear bracket. With those out of the way, we can remove the two subframe bolts. There's one here, one in the back. And now we're going to lower down the subframe so we can get the spring out. We're going to install the original isolator on our Ford Performance spring and put it up into place. You want to turn the rear one until it spins and locks into place. While holding it, we'll jack it back up. Spring in place, you can reinstall the subframe bolts. Let's just get them both hand tight. If everything's still loose, we can install the front bolts as well. Now we'll retighten the subframe bolts. With everything in place, we're going to torque the bolts that hold the subframe in to 129 foot-pounds. The spring done, now we can install our new Ford Performance shock. I'll install the top bolts. Then reinstall the brake bracket and repeat the process on the other side. With the rear suspension in place, now we can do the sway bar. The first step in installing the sway bar is to move the brake line bracket from the upper mount. And do the same thing on the other side. The brake line disconnected, now we can disconnect the end links from the lower control arm. Or the end's disconnected, now the last step in removing the bar from the car is to remove the brackets. The bracket's unbolted, now we can remove the sway bar. With the sway bar off the car, now we're going to transfer both end links over to our new Ford Performance bar along with the brackets. The bar comes with new bushings, so you don't have to transfer those over. Here obviously you can see the huge difference in the Ford Performance bar versus the stock one. Well, the end link's off, now we can remove the brackets. Just simply slide them off and get rid of our old sway bar. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on just the top of these. The inside does not have to be greased. And slide on the original bracket. Now to be able to put this onto our new sway bar, it's going to go on same way the original does. We're going to use the outer holes here. As you can see, that's not going to tighten down. So to be able to use this bracket, this edge here is going to have to be cut off. I'm going to install the bracket back on the car. I'm going to make sure the nut portion is on the inside, so when you put the screw in from the outside, it's going to hold properly. Now we're ready to put our assembled Ford Performance sway bar back on the car. You can fish the bar up into place. Now put the bar up into place and reinstall using the original hardware. The bar bolted down, we're going to move the end links into place on both sides and then tighten them down. Now the last step is to reinstall the bracket for the brake line. Repeat the process on the other side and your installation is finished. It was truly an honor for Ford to choose CJ Pony Parts to build this car for their Ford Performance display at this year's SEMA show. With high-quality Ford Performance parts, along with high-quality parts from Anderson Composites and Cobb, we built a Mustang that we are truly proud of. If you're lucky enough to be attending this year's SEMA show, make sure you check out the Ford display and come check out our Mustang.